Hey guys, tonight we dive into the strange and often misunderstood world of medieval love, a time when romance wasn't candlelit dinners or whispered confessions under the stars, but more like contracts, family bargains, and rules that could break your heart before it ever had a chance to feel butterflies. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel across the world. Now, let's step back into the Middle Ages, where love was less about choice and more about survival. Let's begin by stepping into a medieval village. The year is 1325. The sun has barely risen, and the fields are already alive with peasants dragging wooden plows through thick mud, oxen groaning as they strain against their harnesses. In a small cottage, a girl of 16 pulls her wool cloak tight against the morning chill. Her parents already whisper about who she should marry, not because of love, but because the family desperately needs a connection, someone with land, or someone with tools, or simply someone who won't let them starve in the coming winter. For her, dating isn't a matter of choice. It's a negotiation, a survival contract, and yet, even in this harsh world, she feels her heart race when she passes a boy her age at the village well. This is the paradox of medieval dating. On one hand, it was strictly controlled by class, religion, and family. On the other hand, human beings are human beings. Desire, affection, longing. These things existed as fiercely then as they do now. But unlike today, when people can meet, talk, and even defy family expectations, in medieval Europe, that choice was rarely yours to make. Think about this. If you were a peasant, your marriage and dating prospects were almost entirely controlled by the harvest, your lord, and your parents. A poor harvest? No marriage that year. A new lord demanding taxes. Your parents might sell you off in marriage to balance a debt. And if you dared to fall in love with someone beneath or above your station, the price could be exile, public shame, or worse. But let's shift scenes. Imagine now the echoing halls of a castle. Tapestries line the stone walls. Torches flicker against the gloom, and the sound of boots on stone reverberates through the air. Here, dating looked entirely different, but no less complicated. Noblemen and noblewomen didn't date the way peasants did. Their lives were political chessboards, where every marriage was a move to gain more power, more land, or more allies. A young noble girl might be betrothed at age 12 to a man twice her age, all for the sake of family alliances. By the time she was old enough to understand love, her destiny was already locked away. Yet even here, secret passions bloomed, courtly love, poems written in the dead of night, knights swearing their loyalty to ladies they could never truly have, became the romance novels of the Middle Ages. But make no mistake, courtly love was often more fantasy than reality. It was about longing, about desire that could never be fulfilled. Real marriages, they were far more likely to be cold, strategic, and practical. And this is where the drama of medieval dating becomes irresistible. On the surface, it was duty. Beneath the surface, it was rebellion. Every stolen glance at a festival, every hidden note slipped into a sleeve, every dangerous tryst in the shadows of a chapel. These were acts of defiance against a system that said your heart didn't matter. Let's go back to our peasant girl at the well. She sees the boy again, the one who makes her cheeks burn. He smiles briefly, then quickly looks away. They can't risk being caught, but over the weeks, they invent a silent language, a flower left at the doorstep, a song hummed near the field, a glance that lingers a second too long. To us, it seems innocent, even sweet. But to them, it was thrilling, because any step too far could mean her parents marrying her off elsewhere, or the village priest condemning her family for sin. This is what makes medieval dating so gripping. To explore, every ounce of love was under pressure, forbidden or restricted, yet all the more powerful because of it. Imagine living in a time when simply speaking to someone of the opposite sex without permission could spark rumors that ruined reputations. A time when the priest's eyes followed you, when your father's word was law, when even the rhythm of planting and harvest decided whether you'd marry for survival or not at all. The truth is, medieval dating wasn't about falling in love. It was about walking a razor's edge between desire and duty. And yet, within this system, real love did exist. Secret, risky, fragile love that defied the odds. And those stories of stolen kisses and forbidden romances survive in whispers, in poems, in hidden letters that historians still uncover. So the next time you think about dating as swiping right or awkward first dates at coffee shops, think about this. In medieval times, one wrong look, one reckless act of passion could cost you everything. That's where our story begins. A world where romance was dangerous, survival was everything, and yet people still risked it all for love. If you've ever complained about nosy relatives interfering in your love life, then step carefully into the Middle Ages. Because back then, privacy was almost non-existent. Dating, as we understand it today, wasn't just about two people exploring feelings. It was a community affair, policed by parents, priests, and lords who watched every step, every glance, every whispered word. Every meeting at the edge of a field came under suspicion. Imagine a love story not just written by the heart, but co-signed by the church, negotiated by families, and overseen by the eyes of everyone in your village. In a medieval village, houses stood close together, their timber frames leaning into narrow dirt streets. When a boy and girl dared to talk at the well, it wasn't just the sound of water sloshing that filled the air. It was the sharp eyes of neighbors peering from behind shutters. News traveled fast in a world without newspapers. If a young man lingered too long while helping a girl carry a bucket, whispers spread like wildfire. He has eyes for her. Does her father know? Does the priest approve? And the priest's approval mattered more than anything. The church wasn't just a place of worship. It was the gatekeeper of love and marriage. Courtship, without the blessing of the church, could mean excommunication, fines, or worse. A simple kiss could be condemned as sin. And yet, this strictness made dating all the more intense. Lovers learned to communicate through secrecy. A ribbon tied on a fence post, a song hummed as code, a candle flickering in a window, as a sign of devotion. What we see as romantic gestures today were once acts of rebellion against a suffocating system. Among nobles, the watchful eyes were even sharper. A young lady in a castle couldn't move without attendants trailing behind her. A knight who wished to court her had to navigate layers of protocol. First the family, then the church, and finally the politics of land and alliances. It was as if love was a prisoner trapped in a gilded cage. Knights would compose verses of longing, not because poetry was fashionable, but because it was the only safe way to express feelings forbidden in daylight. A song sung in a courtyard or a poem slipped under a door wasn't just pretty, it was survival. But the danger didn't stop at whispers and disapproval. There were consequences. A peasant girl, discovered sneaking out to meet a boy, could find herself beaten or locked inside by her family. Her reputation ruined beyond repair. A noblewoman caught in an affair might be cast aside, sent to a convent for life, her lover executed for dishonoring her family's name. Imagine the stakes. A single meeting could lead to a life of love or a death sentence. Dating was a gamble with fate. Picture this: a harvest festival, music rising from crude wooden flutes, torches lighting the night. Young men and women finally allowed a rare chance to mingle. For a few hours, laughter filled the fields. Masks and dances gave cover for stolen touches. But even here, the village elders watched closely, scanning for pairs who grew too close. A laugh held too long, a dance repeated more than once, and suddenly the chatter began. Are they too familiar? Should we speak to their parents? In this world, romance was a public performance, every step judged by the eyes of others. And yet, these very restrictions carved deeper emotions. When love must be hidden, it becomes sharper, more desperate. A boy who risked sneaking across fields at night to see the girl he loved wasn't just chasing a crush. He was risking punishment, shame, or even death. And that risk made each meeting, each whispered word, unbearably powerful. This was the essence of medieval dating. Not freedom, but defiance. Not privacy, but constant scrutiny. Every act of love was magnified because it was forbidden. Lovers weren't just fighting for affection. They were fighting the weight of their families, their church, and their society. So next time you think your parents are strict for asking who you're texting, imagine living in a world where your every glance was a matter of public judgment. Imagine falling in love under the eyes of a village that never blinked, in a world where every step of your life was watched. Love had to speak in silence. There were no private dates, no secret phone calls, no cozy moments in hidden corners of cafes. In the Middle Ages, if you wanted to show your affection, you had to master a different kind of language, one made of glances, gestures, and symbols so subtle that only the two of you understood. Imagine a peasant boy walking through the muddy lanes of a village. His hands are rough from working the fields, his clothes stained with dirt. But in his pocket lies a simple wildflower, freshly plucked. To us, it looks ordinary. To him, it is a message. Later that evening, as the girl he admires walks past the well, he drops the flower casually on the stone edge and walks away without a word. She sees it, hides it in her apron, and her heart races. To anyone else, it's nothing but a flower. To them, it's a secret whisper. I am thinking of you. This was how dating worked in silence. Lovers invented codes, things that could slip past the eyes of watchful parents and gossiping neighbors. A ribbon tied to a doorway might mean, meet me at the field. A song hummed in passing could carry verses that only the beloved understood. Even the way a jug of water was handed over, or the length of a glance at the church service, spoke volumes. Among the nobles, this secret language was even more elaborate. A knight couldn't openly declare his love for a lady of higher rank, but he could wear her colors tied around his arm in a tournament. A subtle, yet dangerous declaration of loyalty. A noblewoman couldn't risk being seen with her admirer, but she might drop a handkerchief embroidered with her initials where only he would find it. Each gesture carried enormous risk, but that risk gave it weight. Think of the intensity of this world. Today, a text message can say, I miss you. Back then, the same emotion had to be carried in the tremble of a voice, the brush of a hand when passing bread at supper, or a carved mark left secretly on a tree. Every act of affection became a treasure because it was born out of danger. But let's not imagine it was all poetry and sweetness. This language of love could be dangerous too. Misread a signal, and you might find yourself shamed or even punished. Imagine a boy mistaking a girl's kindness for interest. He leaves her a gift, a token of love. She refuses, fearing scandal. Suddenly, rumors spread. She has a secret admirer. She must have encouraged him. In a village where reputation was everything, such whispers could destroy a young woman's chances of marriage forever. And yet, love still bloomed. During festivals, when music and dancing filled the night, young men and women used these events as rare opportunities to step closer, to laugh more openly, to test the waters of attraction. But even there, the silent codes mattered. A longer dance, a shared cup of ale, the passing of a token. These were the moments when romance declared itself, hidden beneath the noise of the crowd. What makes this world so gripping is the weight every gesture carried. A smile wasn't just a smile, it was a lifeline. A gift wasn't just a token, it was a rebellion. Even a glance across a church pew could burn hotter than any embrace. In the end, medieval dating wasn't just about survival or duty. It was about creating an entire language of love that could live under the crushing rules of society. Lovers who could not speak openly still found ways to speak, and in their silence, their passion grew stronger. So, when we think of romance in the Middle Ages, we should remember this. Love then wasn't loud, it wasn't free, but it was fierce. And sometimes, the quietest whispers are the ones that echo the loudest through history. If there was ever a time when medieval dating truly came alive, it was during the festivals. For most of the year, life was ruled by toil and duty, fields to plow, prayers to recite, rules to follow. But when the village bells rang for a feast day, the world changed. Color, music, and laughter filled the air. And for just a fleeting moment, ordinary peasants could step into a world of possibility. For young men and women, These festivals weren't just about food and dancing. They were about hope. Hope for a meeting, for a glance, for a chance to flirt under the cover of celebration. Picture this, a muddy square suddenly alive with color, rough wooden stalls lined with ribbons, bread, and cheap trinkets, music rising from flutes and bagpipes, rhythm that made even tired workers sway their hips. Children ran between legs, men clutched mugs of ale, and women twirled in patched dresses that seemed brighter under torchlight. It was here, in this chaos, that love stories often began. Because while everyone's eyes were dazzled by the celebration, two hearts could steal a moment unnoticed. For peasants, festivals were the rare times when boys and girls could mingle somewhat freely. Families watched, yes, but the energy of the crowd provided cover. A young man might offer a ribbon from a stall as a gift, pretending it was nothing, but his eyes told a different story. A girl might allow a dance, her cheeks flushed not just from the spinning, but from the thrill of being touched in public, even if only for a second. For nobles, festivals were grander, but no less dangerous. Inside castle courtyards, masques and feasts provided opportunities for secret courtships. A knight might approach a lady during a dance, their movements graceful, but their whispers hidden by music. Behind jeweled masks, they could speak more boldly than they ever dared in daylight. But the risk was still immense. A noblewoman discovered exchanging favors with a knight might see her honor ruined, her future shattered. These festivals carried layers of meaning. On the surface, they were about joy. Beneath, they were about testing boundaries, a longer dance than propriety allowed, a shared drink, a stolen glance by the fire. All of these were chances to signal interest without breaking rules. Too obviously, to us, it might seem like nothing. To them, it was a thrilling rebellion. But festivals also carried shadows. In a world where gossip was as sharp as any blade, even innocent acts could ignite scandal. A girl seen laughing too much with one boy might find herself gossiped into a betrothal she didn't want. A boy seen giving gifts too freely might be accused of improper intentions. The same festival that lit sparks of love could also fan flames of ruin. And yet, despite these risks, festivals remained the heartbeat of medieval romance, because here, for a single night, people could imagine a different world, a world where love could be playful, where attraction could be expressed, even if only in coded gestures, for peasants burdened by survival, and for nobles trapped by duty. Festivals were the spaces where hearts dared to dream. So imagine the scene. The music swells, the torches burn bright, and two young lovers find themselves in the middle of a crowded dance. Their hands touch, their eyes meet, and for that brief moment, the rest of the world disappears. Tomorrow, duty will return. Tomorrow, rules will cage them again. But tonight, under the mask of celebration, they can be what they truly are, just two people caught in the dangerous thrill of love. In the Middle Ages, love did not belong entirely to the lovers. It belonged to the church. Every glance, every promise, every secret meeting existed under the shadow of God's house and the men who ruled it. If festivals offered lovers a fleeting escape, the church reminded them that their hearts two were bound by law and faith. To be in love was not only a personal risk, it was a spiritual gamble. Step into a medieval village on a Sunday morning. The air is heavy with the sound of bells, summoning peasants from fields and huts into the stone church at the center of life. Families file in, heads bowed, children tugged along by mothers, fathers guiding with stern hands. Among them walk the young men and women whose hearts beat faster, not for the sermon, but for the chance to see each other across the aisle. But every stolen glance is laced with fear, because the priest's eyes miss nothing. The church was more than a place of prayer. It was the guardian of morality, the judge of relationships. Dating without permission was not romance, it was sin. Two lovers caught together without vows risked public penance, or worse, excommunication. Imagine the weight of that fear, being cast out from the only community you knew, your soul condemned, your family shamed. A kiss in secret wasn't just dangerous, it was eternal risk. And yet, the heart doesn't listen to rules. Lovers still found ways. They stood side by side during Mass, hands brushing as if by accident. They whispered promises during long walks to fetch water, their words drowned by the creak of buckets. They prayed not just to God, but for strength to keep their secret flame alive. Among nobles, the church's chains were even tighter. A nobleman couldn't marry for love if it threatened alliances. A lady's match was decided in chapels and halls, her fate sealed in parchments and seals. Priests and bishops blessed marriages not for affection, but for land, wealth, and power. For nobles, dating wasn't just watched, it was strangled. Love had to bloom in the shadows, written in coded letters and hidden under cloaks. But even the church couldn't fully erase romance. In fact, its rules sometimes made it burn hotter. The idea of forbidden love became intoxicating. Lovers believed their bond was stronger because it defied the sacred. They saw themselves as tragic heroes, their passion so great it could withstand even God's disapproval. And so, secret meetings multiplied, in forests, in barns, in the silent corners of cloisters. Still, punishment was brutal when love slipped into the light. A peasant couple, discovered before marriage, might be forced to kneel at the church door, confessing their sins to the entire village. A noblewoman accused of infidelity could be banished to a convent for life, her lover hanged for dishonor. The church's iron grip was merciless. But here lies the paradox. While the church condemned illicit love, it also fed the idea of sacred union. It gave lovers hope that if they endured, they might one day stand before the altar, hand in hand, sanctified in the eyes of God. The promise of a wedding, however far away, gave meaning to stolen kisses and whispered vows. Imagine it, two lovers kneeling in church, pretending to listen to the priest while silently vowing their devotion. Outside, they dare not touch, but inside their hearts, they have already married each other in secret. For them, love was not just passion, it was rebellion, wrapped in faith. This was medieval dating, under the shadow of the church, strict, suffocating, but also strangely poetic, because in the very act of forbidding love, the church made love feel even more powerful. Each risk, each danger, each punishment only proved how deep their feelings truly were. So, when we picture medieval romance, we must see both sides. The priest at the pulpit, warning of sin, and the young man and woman in the pews, daring to meet each other's eyes anyway. If love was a flame in the Middle Ages, family was the hand that tried to control it. For peasants and nobles alike, marriage wasn't just about hearts. It was about survival, status, and strategy. Dating, in its truest sense, often didn't belong to the couple. It belonged to their families, who chose paths long before feelings ever bloomed. Imagine a peasant household. A father sits at the rough wooden table, his face hardened from years of labor. His daughter, barely 16, hovers quietly by the hearth. She might dream of the boy who smiled at her during the harvest festival, but her father speaks of another man, a widower with 2 cows and a decent field. Love has no place in this conversation. To her family, marriage is not about affection, but survival. Food, shelter, and alliances decide her fate. For peasants, a good match meant survival through harsh winters. For nobles, it meant power. A noble daughter might grow up in a castle, her hands soft, her dresses embroidered with gold. But her future was even less her own. Long before she even met her suitor, her marriage would be sealed on parchment, her name signed away as if she were property. Her hand in marriage wasn't given for love. It was traded for land, armies, or wealth. This is where dating in medieval times took its strangest form. Young people did find ways to meet, to flirt, to feel, but most knew their future was already decided. Their secret romances existed like fragile flowers growing between stone walls. They could bloom for a while, but sooner or later, the walls closed in. Think of the pain of that reality. A boy might court a girl in secret, exchanging glances at church, passing tokens at festivals, whispering beneath the moon. Their love could feel eternal, but then her family would announce her betrothal to another, and all his dreams would collapse overnight. For her, the heartbreak was deeper. She would be forced to marry a stranger, often older, with no kindness in his eyes. And yet, in public, she had to smile. Among nobles, the situation could be even harsher. A lady might fall in love with a knight, brave and loyal, who swore to serve her. Their love could be pure, poetic, and thrilling, but her father would already be arranging her marriage to a lord she had never met, one who owned distant lands. To defy that decision was not just rebellion, it was treason, and treason was paid for in blood. But here lies the twist. The tighter families gripped, the more lovers fought back in secret. Some peasants dared to run away together, vanishing into the forests, choosing poverty over separation. Some noble lovers whispered promises they could never fulfill, their romance immortalized in hidden poems and songs. And in these rebellions, medieval dating carved its true shape, not free, but defiant. Of course, rebellion was costly. A runaway peasant couple risked starvation, exile, or capture. A noble woman caught in forbidden love might be locked away in a convent for life. A knight might face execution for daring to love above his station. And yet, lovers still dared, because even in a world ruled by families and lords, the human heart refused to bow completely. This was the cruel truth of medieval dating. Choices were stolen long before love could speak, and yet love still found a voice. In the shadow of arranged paths, it whispered in secret, risked everything, and burned even brighter because it was forbidden. So when we imagine romance in medieval times, we must remember this. For many, dating was not freedom. It was resistance. It was the quiet struggle of two hearts against the weight of family, society, and fate. And sometimes those hearts broke, but sometimes they endured, and their defiance became legend. If arranged marriages and family control chained love, then forbidden romance was the fire that broke those chains. In the medieval world, nothing burned brighter and more dangerously than the passion of a love that was not allowed. Dating in secret wasn't just risky, it was deadly. Yet lovers across Europe chose danger over silence because the heart has always been stubborn. Picture a peasant girl promised to a wealthy farmer twice her age. She doesn't want him. She never did. Her heart belongs to the boy who works beside her in the fields, his laughter echoing in her ears long after the day ends. They meet in the shadows of barns, whispering their dreams, knowing each meeting is borrowed time. If caught, she might be beaten, disgraced, or forced into marriage sooner. He might be punished, cast out, or worse. But to them, every stolen moment is worth it. Now imagine the stakes for nobles. A noble woman locked in a cold marriage with a lord who treats her like property might turn her heart toward a knight sworn to protect her. Their love is poetry and tragedy combined. They exchange letters hidden in prayer books, tokens tucked beneath armor, glances shared during court gatherings. For them, every word is a rebellion, every kiss a betrayal, punishable by death. And yet they continue, because their love feels more real than the gilded prison of their arranged marriage. The dangers were not imagined. They were very real. A noblewoman caught in adultery could be publicly shamed, stripped of her titles, or sent to rot in a convent. A knight who dared to love above his station could be executed. Even among peasants, lovers caught breaking betrothals risked being dragged before the entire village, humiliated and punished under church law. But the thrill of the forbidden made love intoxicating. Lovers believed their passion was stronger because it defied the world. They clung to each other not in spite of the danger, but because of it. To love in secret was to feel alive in a world where life was otherwise ruled by duty, labor, and obedience. Medieval songs and poems are filled with these forbidden flames. Troubadours sang of ladies who loved knights in defiance of their husbands, of peasants who ran into the night to escape arranged fates. These stories spread because they reflected what so many secretly felt, that love was worth risking everything, and perhaps that's why they survived for centuries, because they spoke to the universal truth that passion, once ignited, cannot be contained. Still, not every forbidden flame ended in tragedy. Some couples endured, outlasting scandal and suspicion. A peasant couple might flee to another village, starting new lives where no one knew their past. A noblewoman might have a secret romance hidden so well it lived undetected for years. But for every love that survived, many more were destroyed, buried under the weight of the law, family, and fear. So when we picture medieval dating, we must see it for what it often was, a dance with danger. Forbidden love was not just a storybook, fantasy. It was a reality lived by countless men and women, peasants and nobles alike. And though many paid the price, their stories still echo, reminding us that the heart has always been willing to risk everything for love. If forbidden love was dangerous, then love tangled with jealousy could be deadly. In the medieval world, hearts were rarely free, and when more than two people were caught in the same web of passion, the results could shake villages, families, even entire courts. Dating wasn't just about affection. It was about pride, honor, and sometimes survival. Imagine a small medieval village. A young girl is admired by two men. One a hard-working farmer, the other a blacksmith with broad shoulders and fierce eyes. Both bring her small gifts, a basket of apples, a simple iron brooch, each trying to win her heart. But the problem isn't just her decision. In this world, rivalry isn't harmless competition. It's a matter of honor. When tempers rise, the entire village watches, and a simple courtship can turn into a feud. Among peasants, jealousy often spilled into brawls. Two men might fight at the edge of a field, fists and knives flashing, each determined not to lose face. A girl who found herself at the center of such rivalry faced shame if the situation spiraled out of control. She might be forced into choosing quickly, not for love, but for peace. And sometimes the winner of such conflicts wasn't even the man she truly wanted. Among nobles, the stakes were even higher. Picture a lady at court, her hand formally promised to a wealthy lord, yet her heart secretly leaning toward a knight. Another suitor, a rival nobleman, believes her affections belong to him. Soon, whispers spread through the castle halls, fueled by jealousy and pride. In a society obsessed with reputation, a single rumor could ruin a woman's honor and spark bloodshed. Rival nobles might challenge each other to duels, fighting not only for her hand, but for their dignity. And in the end, she often had the least say in the outcome. Jealousy was poison, but it was also fuel for drama. Troubadours sang tales of knights dueling to prove their devotion, of women forced to choose between passion and duty. These stories captured imaginations because they reflected a truth everyone knew. In a world where love was restricted, jealousy magnified every glance, every gesture, every word. But the danger was not limited to men. Women, too, felt the sting of rivalry. A noblewoman might see her husband's attention wander toward a younger court lady, and her fury could erupt into schemes of vengeance. A peasant girl might watch as the boy she adored gave his smile to another, and bitterness could turn her heart cold. Jealousy didn't discriminate. It consumed whoever let it in, and jealousy often ended in tragedy. A duel could leave one man dead, another maimed, a woman widowed before she was even truly married. A rumor could destroy reputations, leaving lovers separated forever. A lord's suspicion of infidelity could condemn both wife and lover to brutal punishment. In this world, emotions weren't private. They were public battles with real costs. Yet, love triangles and jealous rivalries also created some of the most enduring legends. They became the backbone of medieval romances, the drama that drew listeners closer to the fire as stories were told. Because deep down, everyone understood. Everyone had felt the ache of envy, the fear of losing love, the desperation to hold on to someone before it was too late. So when we talk about dating in medieval times, we cannot ignore jealousy. It wasn't just a personal emotion. It was a force that could change lives, shift power, and end in blood. To love in that world meant to risk not only your heart, but sometimes your very life. In the medieval world, love was never just between two people. It was always under the gaze of the church. Priests, bishops, and monks held enormous power, not only over souls, but over hearts. Dating, courtship, and marriage were carefully measured against rules of morality, sin, and salvation. To step outside those lines was to risk not only scandal, but damnation itself. Imagine two young peasants drawn to each other. They meet secretly after church, whispering by the well, their hands brushing under the moonlight. To them, it feels pure, natural. But to the church, such meetings, unsupervised and unblessed, carried the stain of sin. If discovered, the couple might be dragged before the village priest, forced to confess their desires as if they were crimes. A kiss could be forgiven, perhaps, but lust? That was the devil's trap. The church made itself the guardian of love. It decided who could marry and when. It outlawed unions within certain degrees of kinship. It set holy days when weddings could not take place. Even the most private acts of love, touch, intimacy, desire, were fenced with rules. The church taught that love was acceptable only within marriage, and even then, only for the purpose of children. Anything beyond that was labeled dangerous, sinful, corrupt. Yet people were human. Desire did not vanish because a priest declared it forbidden. Young men still longed for girls they could not touch. Married nobles still strayed with lovers they could not publicly claim. The tension between love and the church's rules made romance feel even more dangerous, even more intoxicating. Every glance, every touch became a rebellion, a defiance not just of family or society, but of God himself, or at least of those who claimed to speak in his name. The church didn't just warn, it punished. Peasants caught in premarital affairs could be fined, whipped, or forced into public penance. Nobles caught in scandal risked disgrace that could ripple across entire dynasties. A priest might demand that a woman accused of sinful desire stand barefoot at the church door, begging forgiveness in front of the entire village. A man accused of adultery might be branded with shame, his family's honor tarnished. But perhaps the greatest power the church held was invisible: fear. People believed that sinning in love could condemn them to eternal hellfire. Imagine the torment of a young woman in love, torn between her desire and her faith, terrified that every kiss might condemn her soul, or a man whose passion led him into secret trysts, only to kneel afterward in church, whispering desperate prayers for forgiveness. The church turned love into a battlefield between desire and salvation. And yet, even within these walls, love persisted. Lovers found ways to bend the rules, to confess their feelings in coded words, to seek blessings in secret. Some priests turned a blind eye, knowing that humanity could not be caged forever. Others became the very villains of these stories, exploiting their authority to control who could love whom. The church's watchful eye shaped medieval dating more than any other force. It reminded people that their love was never private, never free. It belonged not only to families, not only to lords, but to God, or at least to those who ruled in His name. So when we picture medieval romance, we must see it framed not only in moonlight and whispers, but in confessionals and sermons. Every touch carried weight. Every kiss risked sin. Every passion became a struggle between flesh and faith. And in that struggle, hearts broke, but they also burned brighter, because in a world where love was policed by heaven, to love freely was the most dangerous sin of all. In an age without smartphones, without whispers carried by instant messages, medieval lovers had to invent their own language of romance. Dating was not just about stolen moments. It was about symbols, letters, and small tokens that carried the weight of entire hearts. Imagine a peasant boy who cannot risk being seen with the girl he loves. During the village festival, he dares to pass her a small ribbon tied in a knot that only she understands. To anyone else, it is just a scrap of cloth. To her, it is everything. A promise, a confession, a hope. She hides it under her dress, close to her heart, knowing it could betray her if found. Among nobles, tokens became an entire language of passion. A lady might give her knight a glove before he rode into battle, a silent vow that her heart rode with him, a simple favor, an embroidered scarf, a lock of hair, a jewel hidden in his armor, became a lifeline. In return, the knight might carve her initials into his shield, or wear her colors proudly in a tournament. Every gesture was risky, every gift dangerous. Yet it was through these tokens that love survived where words could not. But tokens were not enough. Lovers longed for words, for the freedom to speak what burned inside them. And so, letters became the lifeblood of medieval romance. Written on scraps of parchment, sealed with wax, passed by trusted servants, or hidden inside prayer books. They carried secrets across stone walls and guarded gates. Some were filled with longing. I dream only of you, though I dare not speak your name. Others were desperate pleas. Meet me beneath the old oak when the moon is high. And some were simply confessions that could never be spoken aloud. The danger was always near. If a letter was intercepted, it could destroy lives. A noblewoman's husband might find proof of her betrayal. A lord might discover that his daughter loved a man of low station. A priest might use the words as evidence of sin. One careless phrase, one broken seal, could lead to ruin. And yet, lovers still wrote, because letters gave them something the world denied: a voice, a chance to pour out every secret thought, every trembling desire, every hope that one day love could be free. For peasants, These tokens and letters were fragile treasures, often hidden away in barns, behind loose stones, in cottages, or buried beneath fields. For nobles, they became dangerous relics of passion, sometimes even discovered centuries later in crumbling castles, telling stories of loves that defied kingdoms. What makes these letters and tokens so powerful is their intimacy. They remind us that love in the Middle Ages was not so different from today. People longed to connect, to be seen, to be remembered. They wanted proof that they were not alone in their feelings. They wanted something to hold when the world felt cold, and so a ribbon, a glove, a lock of hair, a secret letter, these became more than objects. They became lifelines. In a world ruled by power and fear, they were the whispers of hearts refusing to stay silent. Dating in medieval times was not just about grand gestures or dangerous meetings. It was about the quiet, trembling bravery of passing a token, of writing a word, of believing that even in the harshest world, love could find a way to speak. In the medieval world, where daily life was ruled by labor, hunger, and duty, festivals were more than celebrations. They were rare moments when love could breathe. They gave peasants and nobles alike the chance to mingle, to laugh, to steal glances in the open air, and for many, they were the closest thing to dating that the Middle Ages allowed. Imagine a peasant village preparing for the harvest festival. The air smells of roasted meat, bread fresh from stone ovens, and ale poured into wooden mugs. Colorful ribbons sway from poles in the square, and music echoes from flutes, drums, and fiddles. Young men and women, usually kept apart by chores and family, suddenly find themselves free, dancing, laughing, eyes meeting under torchlight. For a boy, this is his chance to show courage. For a girl, her chance to test a suitor's spirit. One spin of the dance could spark a lifetime of longing. But the festival was not only about music. It was a stage where courtship played out under watchful eyes. Parents stood nearby, pretending to enjoy the festivities, while secretly measuring who their children danced with, who blushed, who lingered too long. A father might allow his daughter a dance with a suitor, but make sure she returned before midnight. A mother might whisper in her son's ear, reminding him not to waste time on a girl with no dowry. Even in joy, duty never truly left. For nobles, festivals and feasts were even grander spectacles. Imagine a castle hall lit with 100 candles, goblets brimming with wine, banners of family crests hanging above, knights strutted in polished armor, ladies glided in gowns embroidered with gold thread. Here, romance played out in riddles and gestures, in subtle glances exchanged across long tables. A nobleman might prove his admiration by requesting the first dance, while a lady might grant her favor with a smile or a handkerchief. Behind the splendor, though, the same nervous hearts beat, the same risks trembled. Festivals also allowed for something rare: anonymity, with masks, costumes, and drunken laughter. People could escape their roles, if only for a night. A peasant girl might dance with a boy she would never be allowed to marry, hidden behind the blur of wine and song. A noblewoman might slip into the crowd, unseen by her watchful husband, and exchange whispers with the knight she adored. These fleeting moments gave lovers courage, even if daylight would tear them apart again. But festivals were also dangerous. A wrong step could lead to scandal. A whispered promise overheard could turn into gossip that destroyed reputations. A drunken confession could spark jealousy and violence. In villages, fistfights sometimes broke out when two men claimed the same partner in a dance. In courts, a single rumor born at a feast could end in exile or execution. Still, people risked it, because in a world where every day felt like a chain of duty and labor, festivals offered something more: freedom. They gave men and women a chance to imagine what life might be like if they could choose, if they could love without fear. And sometimes, those nights of music and laughter planted seeds of love that grew into marriages. Whether blessed by families or born of rebellion, dating in the medieval world rarely looked like dating today. But festivals and dances came closest, giving love a stage to shine, if only for a fleeting moment. And in those moments, hearts spoke louder than lords, priests, or parents. In medieval times, not every romance was blessed. Some were hidden in shadows, whispered in corners, fueled not by permission, but by desire. These were the forbidden affairs, the dangerous loves that defied family, faith, and law. And though they carried the scent of ruin, they also burned the brightest. Imagine a young noblewoman married off to an older lord, her life locked behind stone walls. To her family, it is a marriage of wealth and strategy, but to her heart, it is a prison. One day, in the courtyard, she catches the eye of her husband's squire, a young man closer to her own age, bold yet kind. At first, their words are innocent, a polite greeting, a shared smile, but each stolen glance grows heavier, until one evening, under the torchlight, their hands touch. In that moment, a fire begins that neither faith nor duty can extinguish. But such affairs carried terrifying risks. A woman accused of infidelity could lose everything: her name, her home, even her life. Men caught in affairs with married noblewomen were often executed, hanged, or exiled. For peasants, the punishments were public and humiliating: whippings, fines, or forced marriage to settle scandal. And yet, people still risked it. Why? Because love, when denied, becomes hunger, and hunger is impossible to silence. Among peasants, forbidden love often grew from desperation. A girl promised to a farmer might fall for a wandering minstrel who brought music and stories into her dull world. Their affair would be secret, hidden in barns or behind haystacks, never meant to last. But even if it ended in heartbreak, those moments gave her something no arranged marriage ever could: choice. Among nobles, forbidden affairs were entangled with politics. A queen, suspected of taking a lover, risked plunging an entire kingdom into chaos. A knight rumored to be close to a princess could spark war between rival houses, and yet history is filled with whispers of such loves, passions so strong they threatened thrones. The church condemned these romances with fury, calling them sins that led straight to damnation. Priests warned that adulterers would burn in hellfire. But still, secret letters passed between hands. Still, lovers found each other in gardens, in towers, in candlelit chambers. The more forbidden the love, the more irresistible it became. And when forbidden loves were discovered, the cost was devastating. Lovers were torn apart, families disgraced, blood spilled. A noblewoman might be locked away in a convent for the rest of her life. A peasant man might be whipped through the village square, his lover forced to watch. Sometimes, entire families carried the stain of scandal for generations. Yet even tragedy could not erase these stories. Troubadours sang of forbidden affairs, turning them into legends. Listeners leaned closer to the fire, their hearts aching with both fear and desire, because deep down, everyone understood, everyone knew what it was like to want what they could not have. Forbidden love was dangerous, but it also revealed something powerful: the human heart's refusal to be caged. In a world ruled by lords, laws, and the church, love still found cracks to slip through. Lovers risked everything for stolen hours, for secret kisses, for the feeling of being alive, even if only for a moment. Dating in medieval times was not just about arranged matches and festivals. It was also about desire, the kind that broke rules, shattered chains, and sometimes destroyed lives. And it is in those forbidden loves that we see the most haunting truth, that even in the darkest times, passion burns brightest when it is forbidden. In the medieval world, dating was never just between two people. It was between families, reputations, and entire communities. To love someone was not simply to risk your own heart, but to gamble with honor, a currency more powerful than gold. Picture a young man in a village, hopelessly in love with a girl from a rival family. Their feud stretches back years, perhaps over land, perhaps over blood. For them, every glance carries danger, every meeting must be hidden. Yet they cannot resist. They meet at the edge of the forest, hearts racing, whispering dreams of marriage. But they know that if they are discovered, it will not just be their own lives at stake. Their families might erupt in violence, crops could be burned, lives destroyed. The weight of family honor crushes even the smallest hope of freedom. Among nobles, the stakes were even higher. A lord might marry his daughter to a man twice her age, not for love, but to secure a treaty or expand his lands. Her opinion rarely mattered. For her, marriage was duty, a duty that carried her family's honor into another house. If she resisted, she risked shaming not only herself, but her entire bloodline. If she obeyed, she often surrendered her heart. And yet, love refused to be silenced. Some noble women secretly hoped their husbands would die in battle, so they might remarry for love. Some men quietly defied their fathers, refusing arranged matches to chase the women they adored. These rebellions were rare, but when they happened, they shook society, because family honor was not just personal, it was survival. A dishonored family could lose land, wealth, allies, even safety. Even peasants felt this pressure. A farmer might forbid his son from courting a girl with no dowry, warning him that love would not fill their stomachs. A mother might scold her daughter for dreaming of a boy with nothing to offer but affection. For families scraping by, survival always came first. Love though sweet, was often seen as dangerous, foolish, even selfish. But when love clashed with honor, stories were born. Stories that still haunt us today. Lovers who ran away together, only to be hunted down. Marriages that collapsed under the weight of resentment. Families torn apart because two young hearts dared to challenge tradition. These were not just romances. They were tragedies, remembered and retold in song, warning others of the cost of defying honor. Yet, despite the dangers, love always fought to survive. Because even in a world where honor ruled, the human heart longed for freedom. And sometimes, just sometimes, love won. Two families reconciled through marriage, feuds ended, and peace was restored. In those rare moments, love became not just rebellion, but salvation. Dating in medieval times was never free. It was entangled with family duty, with alliances, with honor. To love was to risk shame. To marry for love was to gamble with the future. And yet, people still did it, because love, even under the crushing weight of honor, was worth everything. In the medieval world, no force held more power over love and dating than the church. Every glance, every kiss, every marriage vow, each one was watched, judged, and bound by rules said to come from God Himself. To love outside those boundaries was to risk your soul, and sometimes your life. Picture a peasant couple, two young hearts desperate to marry. They cannot simply exchange vows beneath the stars, as lovers once did in older times. The priest must bless the union. The banns must be read aloud in church for 3 weeks, and the village must be given the chance to object. If the church said no, their love was forbidden, no matter how deeply they longed for each other. Without blessing, their marriage would be branded sinful, their children illegitimate, their souls in danger. For nobles, the church's grip was even tighter. A lord might want to marry a woman from another powerful family, but if the church declared them too closely related by blood, even if that bloodline stretched back generations, the union was forbidden. And yet, kings and queens found ways to bend these rules when it suited them. Sometimes they begged the Pope for special dispensations. Other times, they ignored the rules and faced excommunication. Even thrones trembled under the weight of the church's control. Priests preached that love was dangerous, that desire was sin, that passion must be restrained. Couples who met in secret were warned that hellfire awaited them. Affairs were condemned as deadly sins. Even young men and women caught flirting too boldly could be shamed from the pulpit. Imagine the humiliation of sitting in church while your priest called out your name, warning your entire village of your wickedness. But love is stubborn. Despite the sermons, despite the fear, men and women still sought one another out. They whispered beneath oak trees. They exchanged tokens. They risked everything. And when their secret romances were discovered, the punishments were brutal. A noblewoman caught in adultery might be locked away in a convent, her lover executed. A peasant girl, pregnant out of wedlock, might be forced into marriage, or worse, shunned forever. The church's judgment was merciless, and yet the church was also the only path to legitimacy. Lovers who wished to be together had no choice but to kneel before its authority. Weddings became holy rituals, Marriage is binding, not just before men but before God. In candlelit chapels, trembling voices spoke vows that tied their souls together until death. The moment was sacred, and yet it carried weight. To break those vows was not just betrayal, it was heresy. Still, not all priests were enemies of love. Some turned blind eyes to secret meetings, understanding the pain of young couples torn apart by rules. Some even helped, carrying letters, arranging meetings, blessing forbidden unions in quiet corners of churches. In a world of strict rules, these quiet rebellions gave hope. Dating in medieval times was never free from the shadow of the church. Every choice was measured against sin and salvation. To love was to fight, not just against families, lords, and duty, but against God's own representatives. And yet, love endured because even the greatest power of the age, even the threat of eternal damnation, could not silence the human heart. As the medieval centuries passed, love and dating left behind more than fleeting romances. They left behind stories, traditions, and scars that would shape generations. What it meant to fall in love, to choose, to risk, it all carried echoes of the medieval world. Echoes that we still feel today. Picture an old man in a village square, his back bent with age, his face lined with memory. Around him, children gather as he tells stories of lovers who defied lords, of peasants who danced in the firelight, of knights who risked their honor for a lady's smile. These were not just tales to pass the time, they were lessons. Each story carried warnings of the dangers of desire, but also hope, reminding the young that love, though risky, was the most human thing of all. The legacy of medieval dating was one of contrasts. On one side stood fear, fear of the church, of family, of scandal, of punishment. On the other stood longing, the hunger for freedom, the pull of passion, the dream of choosing one's own heart. Between these two forces, every medieval lover lived and struggled. For peasants, love was often a rebellion against poverty. A stolen kiss at a harvest festival was more than affection. It was a taste of freedom in a life bound by toil. For nobles, love was a gamble with power. To marry for desire rather than alliance was to risk kingdoms. Yet some still dared. For both, the price of love was high, but the reward, a moment of true connection, was priceless. And though the centuries have passed, much of what they endured still lingers. We no longer kneel before priests to prove our love, but society still whispers its judgments. Families may no longer trade daughters like coin, but expectations and pressures remain. The weight of honor may be lighter now, but hearts still know the pull between duty and desire. What makes the medieval story of dating so haunting is not how different it was, but how familiar. The fear of rejection, the risk of scandal, the hope that love might change everything. These feelings have not vanished. They live in us still. When we read of a knight sneaking into a garden, or a peasant girl dancing in the firelight, we recognize ourselves. We see that love has always been both a burden and a gift, a danger and a salvation. So when we ask, what was dating like in medieval times? The answer is this: it was never simple. It was dances and whispers, risks and punishments, joy and tragedy. It was a battlefield of hearts in a world ruled by duty. And yet, for all its hardships, it left behind something powerful: the truth that no matter the century, no matter the chains, love will always find a way. Because even in the darkest ages, the heart dared to hope. And that hope is the legacy medieval lovers left to us. A reminder that though time may change, the courage to love remains eternal. So, after walking through the hidden world of medieval love, one thing becomes clear. Dating was never just romance. It was survival. It was rebellion. It was fire burning in the shadows. Every glance carried risk. Every kiss could mean ruin. And yet, hearts still dared. Because no matter how harsh the world, no one could cage the human desire to love and be loved. But now, I want to ask you, if you had lived in those times, would you have risked it all for love, or would you have chosen safety over passion? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if this journey into the past gave you chills, then make sure to smash that like button. Subscribe to Crime Unraveled and help us reach our dream of 1,000 subscribers. Because we're just getting started. And the next story might be even darker than this one. Until then, remember, history hides secrets, and we're here to uncover them together.